Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to yet another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. Welcome. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for subscribing. That is key. Keyword, subscribe, please. If you like the show, subscribe. What a great guest. Steve Pavlina and I have known each other since 2008, 2009. I've gone to way too many of his workshops. Just because they're just so darn fun and I can't stop going. So there's that. A bit of a personal development junkie I am. He is a blast to talk to. Where do we start talking about Steve Pavlina? He's like still probably one of the number one personal development bloggers on the planet, or at least in the United States. His big thing now is he's all about travel. So, I think it was sometime last year he started selling off most of his possessions. I think he's planning on selling his house. I have to catch up with him now. But I know that he's got this new rule about like if he can get a conference somewhere in Europe, he doesn't necessarily have to get paid to do that. As long as they pay for travel and accommodations, he'll do the actual conference or workshop for free without a speaker fee. So it's like, will speak, will teach for travel. And I love that. That's really cool. The other cool thing that I like about Steve is at one point a while ago now, probably like 2010-ish, he uncopyrighted all of his blog content. So I thought that was pretty amazing. And I imagine somebody as popular as him, he was probably dealing with a lot of copyright infringement stuff, and maybe he just got tired of doing cease and desist, but that's not really what it was. He just authentically just wanted that blog content to get out there and spread, and he was okay with other people making money from it, and I think that's really cool. So without further ado, my Vroom Vroom Veer chat with Steve Pavlina of stevepavlina.com. Welcome to the show, Steve. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jeff.
So tell us a little bit about what's going on in Steve's world right now.
Right now, I'm prepping for a new workshop. So that's going to be a lot of fun because it's a different type of workshop than I've ever done before. One where there's no pre-planned content whatsoever. Just going with the flow of inspiration all the way through for 3 days.
Whoa. Does it have a name yet?
Yeah, it's called the Conscious Heart Workshop.
Oh, the Conscious Heart Workshop. See, the H was out there in the world. I just I hadn't heard what it was yet.
I know some people were guessing. They were guessing
health and
I know somebody said hedonism.
Yes. Yeah. There was a big hedonism. Yes, hedonism, yes. That's not where we want to go, really. I don't. You are in Vegas, so it would be apropos.
That's true. It would be a good preparation for that type of workshop. But that's a whole different kind of event.
That's a whole, yes. Yeah, that's a whole different thing. So Conscious Heart Workshop. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll probably be there.
Wonderful.
I can't commit yet. I've got like 3 other things that I could potentially go to, and I've committed to none of them. So at some point I have to, as they say, shit or get off the pot and pick my favorite one. So we'll see.
Yeah, maybe you should veer towards the workshop.
I should. Maybe I should veer towards the workshop. So, okay. So The show is stories about moving from vrooming, which is like autopilot, sleepwalking, Groundhog Day, and maybe on the positive side, your happy flow could even be looked at as, oh, you got this, you're really good at this, and you're vrooming through life. And then a veer is when, it's like an awakening or a change or moving towards the path with heart in your vernacular. So tell us a little, when I say that, what does it make you think of first off?
Well, one of the stories that comes up is just when I was younger and like in high school, just eating a typical teenager diet and just getting into all kinds of, junk food, having sodas every day. And
like we all do.
Yeah. And I was a straight A student at the time, but I was very much into my mind and I was pretty much ignoring the fact that I had a physical body at all. So I really wasn't into health at all, but it was, not something I cared about. And as I got a little older and got into college, I became more interested in health, and it started with just taking a nutrition class in school. And so, this sort of course change for me was, instead of just going with that bad diet, the standard American diet, and just eating the same way all the time, I got into going vegetarian during college, and then a few years after I graduated, going vegan, and then experimenting with raw foods over time. And I found that really that stemmed from being so bad off physically. I wasn't sick or anything per se, but couldn't do anything athletically. I always felt like my body was in the way of other things I might want to be doing. Like whenever I would have to go running in PE, I was always one of the slowest in my school. I would always come in like second to last, right before the really overweight kid in our class.
Wow. Right. Right. Okay.
I wanted to get better at athletic things. I was never an athletic kid. I was the nerd.
And this happened to you while you were still like in high school, or?
No, like when I got into college and I started.
Oh, okay.
I started getting a little older, and I just.
So you got all the way through high school, and you were just like anti-athletic, essentially.
Pretty much, but it wasn't so much by choice. I just didn't know any better. I was just, as you call vrooming, with the habits I grew up with. So
right.
I just thought that was normal. Like that's how everybody is. And as I got older, later in my 20s, then I started getting more interested in like, hey, could I actually improve my body physically? Could I actually improve my capabilities? I wasn't into like weight loss so much or trying to impress other people. I just wanted to do it for myself. Like it was to give myself a sense of accomplishment. And so I got into doing martial arts. I did 3 years of Taekwondo. And it was really cool when I got good at it and I could actually spar. And I remember like the first class, I was just dying, just trying to do 5 push-ups or something. And I was just terrible at it. And then, after a time, I'm doing 30 push-ups and just blasting them out. And I lost like 15 pounds really quick. And it was really nice to be in that athletic phase and to have fun doing something intensely physical, doing board breaks where the boards were held higher than my head.
Wow.
And doing board breaks where like, you got 2 people holding boards with a jump, you have to do a jumping back kick through 2 boards with the heel of your foot, or running across the room and doing a jump flying side kick through a couple of boards. You got to hit it right in the right spot.
Yeah. You got to have some high chi too.
Yeah, I guess you could say. And it was neat. I remember during the 1990s, I would collect these broken boards, and they'd be like a
trophy, just
piles of them on the mantle in my apartment, because it gave me a cool sense of accomplishment. And then getting the higher belt levels was really nice too. And then later on, I did a year of Kempo as well, and learned different more hand techniques than foot techniques, and did a lot of sparring there as well. Got injured a couple times, but nothing serious, like a split lip and stuff. But that was a lot of fun. And at that around that same time period, I also got into running and did a lot of distance running. I ended up running the LA Marathon in 2000. That was a really cool accomplishment to go back and reflect on how bad I was at running in high school. Like nobody would believe that I was, somebody who could actually complete a marathon.
So can you like reflect a little bit, because that's a huge chunk of time, right?
Yeah.
Now from your memory, as you were a kid, was that just totally vroom vroom? Or do you remember a time or maybe a condition that sort of like set you down that path of, oh, athletics is stupid, it's not for me? Can you pinpoint that? Or
it was probably just something I picked up as part of my upbringing.
Right.
When I grew up, neither of my parents exercised. My mom was a college math professor. My dad was an aerospace engineer. It was a very mental family to grow up in.
Right.
So I would shoot hoops in my backyard or go bike riding, but my parents certainly didn't push us to do anything physical. We didn't have any exercise equipment in the house, really. There's no treadmill or elliptical machine or exercise bike or weights or anything like that. There was just no part of our house dedicated to exercise.
No, that makes sense.
It was just sort of, there was the idea you could do sports. My parents signed me up for soccer when I was a kid, but I hated soccer. I did 3 years of it and I sucked at it every year.
Now, did you hate it because of the team aspect or the physical thing or both? Or
it depended. Sometimes, it really depended on the coach.
Okay.
Like 1 year we had a coach who was just very competitive and pushing everybody, and I didn't like it.
Right. I can relate to that.
Other times we had a coach, but that was the winningest coach that I had. And then other times we had a coach that was just more in it for the fun and didn't push us that hard. And then that's when we came in dead last.
That's the typical soccer attitude. It's not about winning.
Yeah.
Which, the competitive people hate. Yeah.
When you lose every game, though, you start to wonder maybe we should train a little harder.
Yeah. There should be, something in between, because I understand it. And I guess kids do need that sort of like the world is competitive, get used to it sort of training, I guess. But at the same time, I think we've lost the kind of like good sportsmanship sort of thing, I remember when I was a kid, this is why I asked, because I had a big brother to look up to. And while I was really young, I didn't like him. He picked on me. He was 3 years older than me, and he was like my nemesis. Everything he was into and liked, I didn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I also did like little kid, 7-year-old football, Pop Warner football. And I was just really super afraid to play, if that makes any sense. Because I thought it was so much information. I had no clue what to do if they put me in, So if they did put me in, they put me in on defense and I would run at the guy with the ball. Regardless of what I was supposed to do, And if somebody would have an adult, I ended up quitting because I couldn't handle this. Like, I don't want to play because I think I'll just screw everything up. And if an adult had come and say, look, you're 8, just go out there and have fun, that would have been, I would have, I could have, oh yeah. Okay. All right. I'll just do my best. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. Then I would have kept playing, I think. Didn't happen, but anyway.
I think one, in answer to your earlier question, another way of thinking about it is one way I grew up was thinking of physical fitness in terms of infrequent sports participation, because that's what I learned from school. Like you go, you have PE. For us, it was maybe 2 or 3 times a week. We'd have PE classes, and you just do it for half hour, 45 minutes or whatever, and you're done. And that's your exercise for the week. And then in college, unless I was taking some kind of physical PE class like tennis or something, then there's no real demand to exercise.
Right.
So it was thinking of exercise as something you do infrequently. Even when I was doing soccer, we'd maybe just have 2 practice sessions a week, and maybe 3 if there was a game coming up. And so instead, later in life, I realized that taking care of your physical body requires a much bigger commitment.
Yeah.
And so I started setting much bigger goals for myself and making my own training programs. I remember in 1997, I set a goal to, at the bare minimum, to exercise aerobically for at least 25 minutes every day that entire year. That was my New Year's resolution.
Wow.
And I kept it up for that whole year, even when I got back like 2 a.m. and I was dead tired and I was sick and it was raining outside. I still went out running and did it. And
wow.
It was really cool just to know that I could make a big commitment like that and do it. And at the same time, I was also doing Taekwondo, hour-long Taekwondo classes and occasionally going through testings. That was like 2 or 3 classes a week on top of that. And those were pretty intense classes. But during that year, I got in such great shape, and I noticed it benefited me mentally too. My mind was really sharp. I was doing a lot of computer programming work at the time, and I could just think really clearly. I had a higher metabolism, lots of energy. And so I realized that, the types of standards we're often taught growing up or that we pick up from other people around us or that we set in school, they're just really low. We think of them as adequate, but if you think about it, it's really pathetic. You probably go through something like, basic training in the military, and it's like way higher standards than what people are, used to before they enter an environment like that. And I found that just, being associated with a martial arts studio, it really got me into an environment hanging around people who had way higher standards for their physical fitness than I did. And I liked the fact that it was based on being able to do something with your body, like functionally.
Right.
Some people are really into making their bodies look good. Mm-hmm. That doesn't matter as much to me. It's fine if that's that's what's important to other people. But for me, I cared more about like being able to have new skills that I couldn't do before, like being able to fly across the room and slam my foot through a board. That was really cool to be able to do that. or just being able to like do certain kicks. Like I remember one of the hardest ones to learn was a spin hook kick. Where you're like turning around backwards and spinning your leg up in the air, like Van Damme style or something. and being able to do a board break with your heel, that somebody's holding behind you that you can't even see. So you got to really have a precise feeling of where your foot is at any time. And I never grew up with anything like that. And just being able to have that kind of skill of like knowing your body so much better and what you're capable of. For me, that was so much fun. That was so much more rewarding.
Yeah. And I know like, I think one of your blog posts, it maybe wasn't titled it, but like, was if when in doubt of what to work on first, you say, start with something physical. And it seems to me like when you get out of your head, well, when you pick a physical goal, whatever it is, I want to like walk for lunch, if you start simple, or, I want to do a spinning back kick, whatever you have to experience that. I mean, you can practice in your head, but eventually you're going to actually have to move your body and do the thing. Mm-hmm. And nothing gets you out of your head more than that, right?
Yep. I also find it's a lot more motivating to set fun goals physically versus, so many people set weight loss goals, but then they find them really boring and they don't actually work on it.
Right. Right.
I want to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds or 30 pounds, and then they don't actually do it. And, but if instead you set a goal that's, feels like a fun challenge, a stretch for you, and it has some kind of meaning for you.
Yeah. Whatever's meaningful to you is the important key. Yeah.
Like, can you set a goal to eventually be able to run for 90 minutes straight without stopping, at a good clip and keep your heart rate up? That's something that's kind of be a stretch for a lot of people. Many people who don't exercise regularly be dying after 10 minutes. But if you find intrinsic value in that, like knowing that you can go out any morning and just run for 90 minutes, it really changes your sense of self. It changes your self-esteem, the way you think about yourself, to know that there are these goals that you can set and accomplish. And even if you slack off from that, you still know you can go back to those goals. So one of the reasons I recommend starting with the physical is that it's a good way to not to delude yourself, because your physical body is a great source of measurement. It gives you honest feedback. In other areas of your life, you could set really vague, fuzzy goals and think you're making progress, but your physical body can tell you, how far you ran. You can use clocks and timers and your measurements.
It's very objective. Yeah,
exactly.
It's a good place to start.
Can you do a certain move or not?
Yeah, it's very binary, yes or no sort of measurement.
How many push-ups can you do? Count them. It's how flexible are you? How close can you bend over to touching your toes or doing the splits or whatever it is you want to do? Your body also is great for seeing progress, because even after just a week of doing something, you're going to start seeing progress. And so it's very encouraging. And it's a great way to see that working on your own personal growth makes a difference, that it actually matters when you consciously direct your efforts at something new.
And in my experience, it spills over into other areas to work on. Like,
oh, yeah. And not to mention that getting your body in better conditioning means that it's going to benefit you mentally, emotionally. You'll be happier. There's a great book called Spark by Ratty and Hagerman, and it's basically about the mental benefits of cardio exercise and showing how daily exercise is really helpful for rebalancing your brain and the way it thinks. It rebalances your hormones, your neurotransmitters, sort of like a garbage collection that goes through, cleans everything out. And I often notice that when I slack off of exercise, my thinking is fuzzier and I'm not as clear-minded.
Cranky, moody. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've even been using a sleep tracker application for my iPhone.
Right.
So you can check the quality of your sleep. It measures,
how long you're in REM, how long you're delta. Right.
And it tells that by it uses the accelerometer in the phone to tell when you're moving around in bed.
Oh, wow.
And so it can know when you're mostly awake, and it also has an alarm to wake you up at the best possible time, so you're in the lightest level of sleep, so you're not a total zombie.
Oh, you don't get up all groggy. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. But then it has charts. After you've done it for several days, it can give you graphs and things, and it can associate with other things, like it measures your activity. So I can see that the more activity I do each day, and it'll measure how many steps you've gone, like running or walking, the better my sleep. I can also see that I sleep better if I get better night's sleep if I go to bed at, say, 10 p.m. as opposed to midnight.
Mm. So tell us the name of this app again, because I want to download it.
I think it's called Sleep Cycle.
Sleep Cycle.
It's like 99 cents in the App Store or something like that.
Okay. Well, I'll check it out, and I will.
Not affiliate or anything. I just like that.
No, yeah. I want to try it out because I've heard other people talking about these apps, and I think there's a dedicated device that actually costs money, not 99 cents. It's and the idea is to do the same thing. I heard about it, I think, from Tim Ferriss's podcast. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, that I was going to say that I found whenever I'm really, really stuck or in a low point, and if I start journaling and I start asking my questions, how's my diet? Oh, shitty. How much am I drinking? Way too much. Am I using tobacco? Yes. How's my sleep? Really crappy. Are you exercising? No. So as I've, when you start cleaning those things up, okay, I'm going to take a break from alcohol for 30 days. It's just off. 30-day challenge, no booze. Yep. How much better do you feel just waking up? Oh, it's great. I don't want to drink anymore. Eventually I'm sure I will go back, but that's, it really just changes everything, so I love starting with the physical. So let's talk about a story where you were, you said when you were younger, not only didn't you like, speaking or public speaking, you're I think that's still the number one fear, at least in America. But anyway, when you were younger, you had a phobia of public speaking.
Oh yeah.
And talk a little bit about, what that was like. What was that vroom vroom situation? I mean, were you ever forced to do it?
Oh, all the time. In my grammar school, we had a mandatory speech contest every year, starting, with the first grade. And the first grade,
that's crazy.
7 years old,
6 or 7.
And
yeah,
you've got to do a speech contest.
Wow.
At that age, it's like a nursery rhyme or something you're doing,
right?
Or some kind of Mother Goose story. And you get up and you do this 1 or 2 minute thing in front of the class, and then everybody claps. But it's it can be terrifying, to start that young, trying to get up in front of an audience. And so I found that every year the speech contest would come up. I would dread it a month in advance when I'd see it on the calendar. I was like, oh no, the speech contest again. And no matter how much I'd prepare, I'd get up in front of the class and I would just flub it and my hands would shake and I'd be so nervous and I'd be just like shaking my head as I went back to my seat. And I'd, if I was lucky, I'd get a C or something.
So you just
they were graded too.
Just hated it.
Yeah. And the worst part is I was good friends with like the best guy in our class who was always winning these speech contests. Like every year he would just kick butt on them. And I didn't understand like what he was doing. Because when I'd hang out with him, he was totally normal. And you put him in front of a group, though, in front of the class, and he was just amazing. I was like, how could he do this? Like, where did you get this talent from?
Right.
And it seemed to be like he would practice a good bit, but it didn't seem like he was practicing that much more than I was. But I think one of the differences was that he was just himself. He was calm in front of the class. He wasn't crazy nervous like I was. And I just didn't understand how that was even possible. Because it was a totally subconscious reaction. As soon as I'd hear my name called, or even before then, I'd be like, oh, just start shaking and get all nervous and stuff. And it's, it's a very common fear.
Right.
So I was just, really bad with it. I had to do a little public speaking in college and I got a little bit better at it, but I'd still be pretty nervous, and I wasn't that good at it. I didn't really know how to do it all that well.
So was it a conscious veer? Did you decide at some point that you wanted to, consciously turn or veer towards enjoying public speaking? Or was it more a challenge?
It wasn't like that right away. It was more of a challenge at first. It was, I got through this phase. I got into this phase where I was really into facing my fears, and I wanted to do something I was afraid of.
Okay.
So it actually happened because when I was working in the computer gaming industry, I would get occasional invites to speak at a tech conference or software developers, event or a computer gaming conference. So I like the GDC, the Game Developers Conference, was just pretty popular. I'd get an invitation to go moderate or host a roundtable discussion there, and at that point, the fear began to subside because now it wasn't like this forced speaking that was assigned to me. It was something that I actually enjoyed and had reason to want to do. And I found that there was benefit in doing like, hey, if I could get good at this, it could actually matter to people. I could help moderate a cool discussion, or I could share some information to people.
Right. Okay.
And it was probably in the late 90s or early 2000, maybe around 1999 or 2000 that I did one of my first of those types of events. And it was just like being on a panel with 4 other people. And I was sitting down behind a table with a microphone in front of me. And it was cool. It was pretty easy. And I shared a bunch of knowledge. And then people came up to me afterwards and they were asking me questions or telling me, thanks for sharing that information about how you run your business. It was really helpful. And so I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. For the first time ever, there was actually a reward to doing public speaking. That it actually mattered to somebody other than like it's being graded and for a class assignment, or it's a competition to see who's the best, and you're going to lose. so you have no chance. So why bother? And it's very disheartening to enter a competition where you just feel like you have zero chance of even placing going into.
Why
it.
am I even here?
Yeah, like what's the point? There's 40 people in this contest in my class, and there's no way I'm getting in the, even the top 10. So forget it.
What's the point?
What is the point? I'm going to be in the bottom 10 no matter what. So we'll just settle for that.
We can talk a little bit about the introvert extrovert thing, because it's sort of like, I'm assuming you grew up calling yourself an introvert then.
Yeah. Or at least that's what I was labeled.
Right.
Well, certainly. Yeah. As a kid, I was actually pretty shy. I would have like 1 or 2 close friends a lot of the time. And then as I got into high school, I gradually became more extroverted. I think it's partly because I went to a high school which was very academic focused. And so being good at academics actually didn't make you an outcast. It made you more popular.
A little bit more of a rock star kind of.
In a way, yeah. It was a very like college focused university. I think 98% of our graduating class went on to college afterwards.
Gotcha.
So it was, that kind of focus really made a difference. And that helped a lot. By the time I was a senior in high school, I had a group of like a dozen good friends that I would hang out with all the time. We would call ourselves the group, and we would, we would go to, all kinds of things together. We'd go to Hollywood and see movies together. And I remember we went to Six Flags Magic Mountain, all as a group of 12, and just, hung out there. So it was a gradual process of unfolding there.
Yeah. It's weird because I came out of the womb like an attention whore. No kidding. I mean, you look at me like really, really young pictures of me. I'm like standing in front of the camera with my arms up in the air going, look at me. It's so weird. And I have no clue where that comes from. And there's a lot of theories about, the youngest of 3 birth order stuff. Those are usually your attention whores. And then if you believe in astrology, Geminis are supposed to be very, affable and out there. It's that, where's that come from? I have no clue.
There's also some research I read about recently that indicates that kids that are more sensitive to stimulation are more likely to be introverts, as if the stimulation gets a bit overwhelming. But then the extroverts find the stimulation not as intense, and so they can handle a bit more stimulation.
That makes sense.
Living in a way that puts them in a comfort zone of their own stimulation, whereas the introverts need a much lower level of stimulation, especially social stimulation, to feel comfortable. And right. I'd say that was definitely true of me as a kid. I would find certain social situations just a bit too overwhelming, like overstimulating, and I'd need to get away from it and have some alone time, or I usually would just like hanging out with a smaller group of friends.
Yeah, and that's paradoxically, or I guess, when I go to workshops or networking events, I do get that overwhelmed feeling and I need to go escape and hide. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the energy is just of the room and say the hall is just way too much. Part of me wants to run out there and play and I do. And then I'm just like, oh, now I need a nap.
Mm-hmm. It could also be the type of stimulation.
Right.
I think as I got older, I became a lot more comfortable with, higher levels of stimulation. And so, doing like the game developers conference and the software conferences I would speak at, that became more my comfort zone the more I did it. Like I could handle that type of stimulation. I got more and more comfortable in that environment. And then a few years later, after doing that for a while, I got into doing Toastmasters, which was kind of scary at first to join, but then I got the hang of it, and I was in that for I think 6 years.
Wow.
And did a bunch of speech contests, and that was really cool. Like stretching myself to do something I was just not very good at, and I basically got better just by continuing to set different stretch goals for myself. Like your first goal in Toastmasters is just to get your first speech under the way, which is only 4 to 6 minutes. Mm-hmm. And you can use notes. You can get up in front of the room and read the whole thing. Basically, no matter how you do it, you're going to get a bunch of applause because right. Toastmasters is extremely encouraging. It's all about helping people get better. It's not about judging you or beating you down. It's all about, start where you are and see how much you can improve.
Yeah.
And so I found that environment really encouraging, and then, gradually stretched from that and eventually joined the National Speakers Association Las Vegas chapter for a while, and did a talk there. I did an all-day presentation on blogging there, and it's like a very gradual process over a period of years, starting with a 5-minute speech and getting comfortable doing 7-minute speeches. Having bigger audiences, like getting an audience of 100 people, doing that kind of thing again and again, building up to 20-minute speech, 45-minute speech, 90-minute talks, doing a bunch of those. And then from there, jumping to an all-day presentation, trying different things, learning storytelling, learning to do humor when speaking, doing PowerPoint, just so many different skills that go into it.
So how much prep time would you say you put in before you had the gumption to set up your first workshop? How long
the first? Oh, you mean like in terms of speaking?
Yeah.
Or just to prepare for that one event?
No, in terms of, developing your speaking and so how long were you in Toastmasters and NSA?
Almost 5.5 years.
Before.
to go from like a 5-minute speech up to like a 3-day workshop where I do all the content, myself pretty much. Yeah. And that workshop was also based on my book. And just to prepare for that workshop took me a full month. And it was, based on the content of a book I'd previously written. So it was a lot of prep time.
Right.
And I remember in
but you had worksheets and handouts, and it was like hugely dense content.
Yeah, there was a lot of content in there too.
Right.
It was really packed with material.
Right.
But now, like I remember in Toastmasters, like to prepare sometimes a 5-minute speech would take me 2 days.
Wow.
Like one day to really write it and edit it and get it just right, and another day of just full rehearsal and practice. And I would memorize them like word for word sometimes because I was so uncomfortable speaking off the cuff. I would just have to know everything I was going to say, every word. I would have to have it memorized.
I have to tell a story now.
Go ahead.
I'm going to have to get to the point. Okay, I'm editing now. So I was in high school. And I was in a business education club, okay? And I was, we were going to the regional competition. And I was on a team for computer-aided graphics. And this was in the late 80s. So it was like that black and white early stage Macintosh computer that I had used, but there was so I was on a team and we had a submission, but there was no regional competition in our region for that. But I got to go along to regionals anyway, but I had absolutely nothing to do. So the teachers made me sign up to take something just to go to regionals. So they signed me up for a math test. And I'm not into math tests at all. And I was really mad. I was like, you could have signed me up for anything and you signed me up for math. I'm going to look like a total idiot. Right. And there was another guy and he was equally pissed because somebody had signed him up for extemporaneous speaking. Right. Mm-hmm. So we were on the bus together and we were like, let's trade. So he took the math test and I pretended like I was him and did this extemporaneous speech and we both won. And then we admitted it to our teachers, like right in the nick of time. They were about to announce us as the other person as winners. It was hilarious. So anyway, yeah, I was really good at.
I used.
Go ahead.
Oh, I used to be so bad at extemporaneous speaking. I mean, just absolutely horrible. I would just flub it if I had to do it. I remember
you were just too nervous.
I remember when I was in high school, my senior year in high school was the first year our high school competed in the academic decathlon, which is sort of this event. You compete with a whole bunch of different schools and you send a bunch of students from each school. And I was the captain of our team the first year we were doing it. And there was this speaking thing that everybody had to compete in where you had to do, I think one was a prepared speech and then another part you had to do an extemporaneous speech. They would give you a topic or ask you a question and you had to just go for a few minutes. And I thought, oh man, that was the one part of the whole academic decathlon I really, really dreaded. It made me so nervous because I felt like I couldn't really prepare for it. I mean, we were practiced for it, but I just felt
you can't really practice for other than just be cool, and and if you're not cool, then it's not going to work.
Yep, and I did it, and I knew I flubbed it, which kind of sucks because then it drags the team down a little bit. But we did at least return with some medals, which was really cool. Actually, won first place in geography. I was like, okay. I didn't expect I would win the first place in that, but I was like, okay, great. Sometimes you find talents you didn't know you had.
So let me ask you, because I was at your first workshop and it seemed like you were really comfortable. Were you freaking out or?
No, I wasn't freaking out. By that point, I was pretty comfortable. In fact, I got increasingly comfortable as the event went along because by that point I had already done a bunch of speaking. I'd spoken to a couple different chapters of the National Speakers Association, and that's what would make me the most nervous is like speaking in front of a group of other professional speakers.
Right. Because they're really going to give you some feedback.
Yeah, but speaking at that first workshop, it was like one of the most supportive audiences I could possibly hope for.
Right.
And it was
they were your people.
It was Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And if anything, I probably went into that event over prepared because I'd never done a full 3-day event before. And so I wanted to be extra prepared. So I went in really well prepared, knowing like every little segment I was going to talk about. And I learned over time that I can loosen up a bit on that. It's more fun.
A little?
Yeah. I guess it depends on how you say it. But it's more fun for me now, now that I got more and more comfortable. And for me, that was the key, just getting comfortable on the stage where you feel like it's as comfortable as if you're having a conversation with your best friend, being up on stage in front of an audience, even if you don't know all the people there. And when I had that level of comfort, then I found I could just be more conversational, and events and workshops and speaking engagements would work better that way because now I'm not stuck in my head thinking about what I'm going to say or peering over my notes all the time and trying to stay on track and watching the time. And, it's like there's a lot going on if you're trying to speak from this preset bunch of content, and you've got to get it all in on time and tell all the stories in the right order and make the points in the right order and
it's
tell
too
your
much. It's too
tell
much.
your conclusion.
It's too much for your CPU.
Exactly.
You need your whole brain.
Overloaded.
Yeah.
And so what you're not doing at that time is you're not paying as much attention to the audience then. You're not listening to them. You're not looking at them and seeing how they're reacting.
It's almost like you're just wanting to be present.
Exactly. And so when you're present, it's very different because now instead of trying to spit out your content that you have stuffed into your mind.
Right. I have to say the script.
and cram it down their throats, regardless of how they're receiving it, and just keep cramming it until you're done. Now it's more about listening and responding. It's more conversational. And even if you're the speaker doing most of the talking, the audience is still communicating with you all the time.
Right.
You look at them, you could see, are they engaged? Are they smiling? Are they laughing? Are they just kind of looking bored? Are they falling asleep? There's all kinds of signals you're getting. Do they look confused?
If somebody, yeah, you're right. Who's hitting on who?
Exactly. And so I learned to have so much fun with it. And now I'm finally, going after one of the goals I thought about a number of years ago. I probably conceived this idea for doing this type of workshop maybe around 2012, which was to do a workshop where it's just 3 days all the way through being spontaneous and inspired. It doesn't mean there's no content because my mind is stuffed with years of lots and lots of personal growth content. It'd be no problem for me to just get up and speak extemporaneously for 3 days straight.
Right.
I could just go for 30 days like that if I had to. So, knowing what to say is not the issue. It's not a matter of needing to cram more information into my mind or structured a certain way. Now it's taken on a whole different flavor for me. It's about exploring a whole different type of speaking where it's more about listening and being present and responding to what's coming up, and also co-creating the whole event, the whole experience with the audience instead of arriving with a preconceived set of notion and my plan and my control strategy for the whole event of how it's going to turn out.
And your workshops aren't like a typical workshop either because they're all like, they have this element of, okay, we're going to sit and be basically in receiver mode. Mm-hmm. But then that's going to be combined with phases where you're going to set up a little breakout, okay, so get together with 4 other people and work on this, mm-hmm. for 10 minutes. And then that is repeated. And then you also do let's get everybody together and do this fun thing in the room. That's mm-hmm. another thing. And then there's the other thing where you go, okay, let's get everybody and go out of the room and go experiment in, this casino or out on the, whatever they call that in downtown
Las Vegas.
Downtown Las Vegas, Fremont Street.
Or on the Vegas Strip.
Or on the Strip. Yeah.
I made a list of the different modes of, I can use in a workshop for sharing material and, or having people do activities. And it was I have a list of 14 different things.
Wow.
You can basically lecture, you can tell stories, you can have people get on one-on-one conversations, you can do group conversations or group activities, you can do games, you could get up and leave the room. There's a whole bunch of different ways that people can learn content. And it's, I found that when I'm sitting at events that other people are doing, and we're just sitting down listening for 3 days straight, it gets really tiring. And
yeah.
So there's a lot of different modes of presenting, and you don't have to keep people stuck in their chairs all the time. And, if I'm stuck in an event and it's 3 days of solid lecture, it gets a bit tiring, and it's nice to get up and move around now and then. Or, isn't it nice to meet some of the other attendees there?
Yeah.
So what surprised me is at my first workshop that I did in 2009, it surprised me how much people in the room enjoyed getting to know each other, like how many friendships were born there, and how that was I guess 5.5 years ago, and people from that workshop are still friends with each other.
Oh yeah,
as you can well attest.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they they still hang out together or connect on Facebook, or it's really cool to see that there was this whole community that formed around it. And that's not something I own or control. It's just a cool thing to be able to help bring those kinds of people together and just let them mingle and let them get to know each other and let them make friends.
And let them hug.
And let them hug. I had somebody from that I just hung out with a few weeks ago from the last workshop that I did in August, and she was telling me how when she would hang out with people, like in the evenings or at lunch, she figured, she'd meet some interesting people and that there'd be a lot of people that she just wouldn't connect with as well, like any event she goes to. But she said, no, it wasn't like that at all. She said everybody she connected with seemed like a perfect person for her to get to know in some fashion or another. So she was just really happy that the socializing was so great there. She met some wonderful contacts that were good for her in a variety of ways.
Right.
So that's really cool. And when I learned that was happening, it made me want to put more socializing into the workshop itself, especially to help out some people who are a little more shy, like I used to be, so I can push them to do more, more connecting. And they generally appreciate it a lot. Of course, they feel that a little bit of resistance in the beginning, but once they push through that, then by the third day of the workshop, it's like they have new best friends again.
For some people, it was like a complete social transformation.
Mm-hmm.
From day 1 to day 3, crazy.
Yeah, I love seeing that. For me, it's been a transformation doing these kinds of workshops too, and just realizing how much fun I could have doing this type of speaking. And it's really interesting looking back on my past and remembering how I was when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
If I told my past self that I was doing this today, he wouldn't believe me. He would be like, no,
yeah, right.
You're obviously not my future self. That is not me. He would probably figure he would be doing some kind of introverted career, like a programmer or engineer or mathematician, something like that.
Last year in Mother's Day weekend, I went to a retreat up in Harbin Hot Springs in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all about dance, movement, and singing. And it was still, sort of like a spiritual growth retreat, and they had pillows and really good food, but no hugging. I know. I was so bummed. I was like, why aren't we hugging? Well, I wasn't saying it to people. I was saying it in my head, but I was like, this would be so much better if we were hugging. So one of your vroom, vroom, veer sort of transitions was, and I didn't know this, you probably said it and I was probably zoned out in one of those workshops, but growing up, you were kind of more touch averse. So talk a little bit about that. What were you like when you were rooming through this touch averse version of Steve, who I can totally not relate to? Who's that? I don't know that guy.
Well, since I grew up in a fairly mental family, not in terms of like mental illness, but just, very much in their minds, in their heads, and very logical in that way. There wasn't really much emotional expression, certainly not through touch in our family. And so I, had this association with touch as just something you don't do. It's kind of an alien thing. I wasn't hugged much as a kid. It's like if I did get hugged, it would be by my grandparents. It would be so infrequent, and it would feel very uncomfortable, like when they would come over or something.
You're like, what's going on? Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, touch in the form of like rough housing for my siblings, yes, but not in the form of like affection or anything like that.
Gotcha.
Not as an expression of love or caring or tenderness. It just really wasn't done. And, if anything, I probably had an even more negative association to it. It was like, for me, touch meant you're being punished or something, or you did something wrong.
You were getting spanked.
Yeah, exactly.
Not cool.
Yeah. So I even remember, going through high school, I would see, some of my male friends, they would have women come up to them and just like hug them as a greeting, or, talk to them or give them a kiss on the cheek, and they'd be very touchy. And I'd just be like, how are they doing that?
And you're like, hey, that looks cool.
Because like people would never do that with me, like women, if I knew a woman, she would never do that with me, or a girl my age. And it's like, she would never come up and give me a hug or something. I guess in a way people have a sense about that. They can sense if you're a huggy person. And if so, you're likely to get a lot more hugs. And if they sense that you're likely to be resistant to it, they just don't hug you a lot of the time. And I found that out. It seems to be very true later in life, as I got, more through my own transformation and got that kind of sense about other people too. But even when I got to college, I was still very touch averse. I remember one time one of my classmates, a woman, invited me to go study with her. And I said, sure. So we go to this little study room. Just the two of us are in there by ourselves. And, we got our books open and we're going over some of the lessons and stuff. And then she starts touching my forearm, kind of just stroking it kind of sort of gently. And I realized, she has more on her mind than just studying together. Well, just the touch that she gave me, which under normal circumstances probably would have been very pleasurable and might have opened the door to some kind of cool connection. It gave me an emotional freak out inside, and I made an excuse to leave right away. And then I honestly, it kind of sucks to say this, but I actually avoided her the whole rest of the semester.
Wow.
That's how bad it was for me. So it's like there was a part of my mind that just couldn't go there, and it's like I couldn't fathom what that would be like to have, that kind of touch presence in my life. It was like this alien concept that was just this black hole I had to avoid at all costs.
So what was the moment where, because this to me is like a real revelation, because I've known you for a long time. And as long as I've known you, you've been, a touch whore. As much as I am an attention whore, you are a touch whore. Sorry. Yep. That's a little over the top, but I don't think you'd disagree.
Yeah.
You're a cuddle whore.
Cuddle slut.
Cuddle slut. There you go.
I guess a cuddle whore would do it for money, but a cuddle slut does it for free.
There you go. But you will take payment.
I don't think I've ever been paid for it, but
for a hug.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to it. But that was a case where I wouldn't say there was one real defining moment.
Okay.
It was a very gradual progression over a period of years. I think it started with a bit of truth, the realization that I was really bad at this, but then just not knowing how to get good at it. So for many years, it was just like, I'm just, not that good at it. And I just realized I was bad at it, and that was it. That's
right. Well, you need that awareness first.
Yeah. And I didn't, but then as I got into personal growth and I thought, there's ways to kind of unravel this. And I started pushing myself with some action to, to like introduce more touch in conversation, so that I'd be talking to somebody and try to touch them on the shoulder. And at first it was so tentative and so awkward because I would like put my hand near their shoulder and then pull back. I was like, that's not right.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see that movie? They did that in a movie.
Oh, really?
It was the one with Seth Rogen and the kid from that shaved his head. He had cancer. He was the little kid from Third Rock from the Sun. He was going to die of cancer, but he ended up living in the end. He had like a therapist, and she was like
Was that 50-50?
Yes, it was 50-50. Yes.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. The lady who ended up being the guy's girlfriend, she was kind of like touch averse, and she was very awkward with her comforting touch.
Yes.
Why did you touch me?
I
I'm
remember
supposed to. Right.
Yeah, because she was brand new at it.
Right.
Yeah. It was very much like that, like totally inexperienced and really dorky and lame and not knowing what I'm doing.
Sure. That's where we start.
I kept practicing more and more, and that helped. And gradually over time, I became a lot more comfortable with it. And that made me want to, the fact that I was so bad at it in the past, just like with, the physical exercise and just like with public speaking, it made me want to go even further with it and actually feel like I'd mastered something again that I was once very afraid of or averse to. And so, eventually I started pushing myself to do a lot of hugs. And that actually, one thing that pushed me to become a lot more huggy was a guy named Don Buckings. I know you met him. He went to my first workshop in 2009, and he was not a huggy guy when he first came to the workshop, or so he told me. Mm-hmm. And he said, he's from Belgium, and he just said it wasn't a very huggy culture. I think he was 26 years old at the time.
Right.
And he got into one of the workshop exercises. One of the challenges I gave people was to go out and see if you could get a random hug or a hug from a random stranger in 5 minutes or less. So you go out and this, we were at the Harrah's Hotel on the Strip at the time. And so you can go to the casino or go out on the Strip and just start up a conversation with somebody and see if you can get a willing hug from them in 5 minutes or less. It was just a fun challenge for some people who wanted to do an extra challenge. And he went with it and got it. He came back and said he got 2 hugs in 1 minute from 2 people in an elevator.
Wow.
And there was somebody else from the workshop there as a witness too, who could corroborate his story. And then he kept going with it, and he got it down to like 45 seconds, and then he got down to 15 seconds. And then he went back to Belgium and kept practicing. And he eventually told me by email that he could do it in just like 1 second now. I said, what? So he was going to come to the workshop a year later, the October 2010 one, which was the Halloween workshop we did. Mm-hmm. Were you at that one too?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And he was Dr. Evil.
He was Dr. Evil because during that time he had got diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
And he had a big tumor in the center of his chest. And so he was going through treatments for that. But he became a very, very huggy person, and he was going around giving hugs to everybody. But he wasn't like that a year earlier, which was really cool to see. And then he went out with a group of us to downtown Las Vegas, and he would just go up and walk up to people with his arms out and a big smile on his face. And about half the people he did that to would hug him. Yeah. And I thought, wow, yeah. Here's like somebody who's really gone far with that in a relatively short period of time. And that inspired me. And so, that inspired me to want to do more hugs at my workshops. And so, later, as I was doing workshops, instead of shaking people's hands as I greet them when they would show up, I would just offer everybody a hug. And that really changed the energy of the event. It made me feel a lot happier and more comfortable there. And I also encouraged the staff members to do it. And a lot of people give each other hugs. So, many people were getting 5 or 6 hugs before they even got to their seat.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think I got 3.
Oh, we'll give you more.
But I'm chronically early. It's that military programming. So
I think for the next workshop we have like 4 staff members now at least. So you should get at least 5, including me. You should get at least 5 hugs before you.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
But it really changed the nature of the events I would do. Offering everybody hugs. It does. Because it feels much more warm that first morning, which is often cold a bit otherwise.
And it takes down barriers too.
Makes people feel a little more comfortable. Even the people who aren't as comfortable being hugged, they do seem to warm up to it after a while, and they often like it.
It's almost like you need this sort of like tipping point. It's like a herd immunity sort of situation.
Yep.
It's like as soon as everybody's doing it, then everybody's doing it. Right. Mm-hmm. So, but with this last workshop was the first time you had, staff people hugging on the way in, and it definitely, it changed the tone. It accelerated the like what you said, that growth herd, sort of like the herd hugging happened a lot quicker as you initiated it. Right.
You also get, now that was my 10th workshop now last year. So
right.
now there's a lot of repeat people coming back. And so we have
they
a lot
know already. Right.
Usually like half the people at each workshop now are alumni from previous events, as opposed to first timers.
Right.
So that's kind of nice, because then it becomes more like a family reunion for them, where they're all coming back and saying hi, seeing old friends, and it has that fun energy. And that's been really cool to do that type of transformation. What's really interesting too is that Don passed away in 2011.
Right.
And yet he continued to inspire people to be very huggy, and people would post things on his Facebook page. I don't know if it's still active now, but for years after he passed away, people were still posting.
Huh? Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if it's still online, but I remember like even years after he passed away, people were posting like happy birthday messages to him and telling him that he inspired them. So it wasn't just, when he did that transformation for himself, it wasn't just about him. He transformed me and a lot of other people to become more huggy and more affection minded, and reaching out and connecting in ways that feel good to people. It's not something you force on people, but I find quite often people really like it. We have a lot of social walls and barriers to touch and so on, and of course there's inappropriate times where you're not going to do that.
Right.
But for the most part, people really like it, and it makes them happier. If we can just get past the walls that we have to connecting in that way.
When I went to massage school, they had the same thing. I mean, it was a hug hello kind of environment, and at least once a month or more. I think the goal was once a week. Everybody in the school would do a hug fest. It would be there's two main rooms, class A, class B. And right at the end of class, like one class would line up and the other class would come over and do a hug line. So it was amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And that was another reason why, and that makes sense in massage school, because you're trying to get everybody over themselves about touch. So I guess you wouldn't be a very good massage therapist if
you're resistant to touching people.
Yeah, and it's weird. Strangely enough, a lot of people were.
Huh. I would have thought if you sign up for school like that, then you would. Well,
a lot of those folks are 18 years old, and their parents are just making them do something. So there's that. Yeah.
Go get a job, kind of thing.
Yeah. Get out of the house. Go do something. And then some people don't have this whole, because you actually, if you start, there's like two phases. And one was the shiatsu Eastern style of massage. And that, the whole thing, the whole session is clothes on. In Western, it's more Swedish. That's not. So like within a month of starting your Western segment, you're like taking your clothes off in class.
Okay.
Yeah. See, and even you're like, oh. So there's this whole thing where they've got to get you really comfortable with a group really fast. I mean, and then you've got to do this weird thing where you're wrapping yourself in a sheet and then getting undressed in a corner kind of thing. Yeah. So anyway, what a great experience that was.
So did that make you more comfortable with touch then too?
Totally.
Did you have any resistance to it in the beginning? Did you have anything to overcome?
I was, me and touch it just wasn't done a lot. I was never one of those people in high school or school at all that was huggy. Now with my family, the women would hug, not so much guys. But like aunts and cousins and, mom, lots of hugging, and I was okay with it, but it was just never, outside of family, unless it was like a really close friend or a girlfriend. It was always like there was an extra bubble of, are we at the hug level? That's just totally arbitrary. And once you've blown past that and just decide to hug hello, it really does serve to break, it's just like anything else in the physical world. It's this imaginary barrier that we've made up.
Yeah, I've learned that pretty much I can always do it, but now I don't always do it when I'm meeting somebody new. But I've learned that I can do it. I can offer it, and just going past the point where I felt like was too much was a good experience for me. Like I remember meeting with a publisher I've worked with for a number of years. I went to their headquarters, and I hugged everybody there in their office, like 15 people or something. As we went, they gave me a tour of their offices. So every person I met, I just offered them a hug. And some people are like, "Oh, great, you like hugs? You're a hugger too." They loved that.
Yeah.
Mostly
some people say no.
Mostly women, and then other people are like, "What? Somebody's hugging me?" Like they're
right.
like their web guy. It's like, what?
Leave me alone.
What? Somebody's hugging me, but it's like he's still hugged.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, it's like I think in all the years I've been offering people hugs, I think only one person ever turned it down.
Wow.
Like just one, and that was a woman who had a headscarf on.
Okay.
And that was in London. Not the huggiest society, but
no.
But I even have done it where I've encouraged people. Like it's surprising how open people are to hugs when you give them permission to. I remember speaking at an event in Berlin with there were like 25 German guys, most of them fairly in their minds in the room. Engineer types, yeah. At a dating conference so they could learn dating skills. And I think there may be 3 women in the room or something. And I had the whole room as an exercise, get up and hug each other. And the funny thing is, after they got to hugging for a few minutes, I couldn't get them to stop. I was like, okay, take your seats. They're like, no, we want to keep hugging. I'm like, okay, just like a bunch of German guys all hugging each other, And I was like, people told me you're never going to get the Germans to hug, forget that. And I was like, nope, it's just the opposite. In a society that makes it, more repressed, it just means that the touch, when it comes out, people want permission to do it. They like it.
Yeah.
It's nice to finally have permission to do that kind of thing.
That was an interesting thing for me when we did the Hug Fest in downtown Las Vegas during the last workshop. Mm-hmm. Just seeing the reactions of the bystanders walking by whom we were attempting to hug.
Yep.
Because there was the whole gambit of people that saw other people hugging and saw the signs, right? And immediately went, "Oh, I can hug." Right. And they hardly needed any permission at all.
Exactly.
Right. And then there was the other people that would hesitate. They would be like, "What's going on? Why does he have his arms open?" And then they would look around and they would see the signs and other people hugging. And they're like, "Oh, he's not crazy. Oh, I can get a hug." And then other people would just be like, give you that look and just keep walking.
Steer way around you.
Exactly. Just
like, okay, nobody's touching me.
They've got an impenetrable wall. And they would even actually it was like my energy was pushing their bubble away, like you said.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also noticed that once people got a few hugs under their belt, like from our group, then the energy of the whole group rose up, and more people, you could feel it. It's like became much more comfortable to hug.
Yeah.
You could see it in the video of the Hug Fest too. Like in the first 30 seconds, it looks more tentative as people are starting to hug, and then at the end, it gets more and more crazy. And then it's like people are picking each other up and spinning each other in circles and stuff. And
yeah, well, and hugging was contagious too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Basically there was this big mob. And it was a kind of a general circle-ish shape. But when I couldn't find a bystander to hug, I would hug my way through the mob to the other side to see if I could find somebody new. But I thought if I would hug my way through, it would try to kind of like add to the contagion of hug. All right.
So it's really quite rewarding, when you can look back on your past and see you used to be a certain way, or there's something that made you feel inadequate, or just something you wanted to get better at, or something you're afraid of, and then knowing that you can actually put into it. And sometimes it takes really years, of nudging yourself. But if you keep making progress, you look back, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and you just see massive transformation. It's like black and white. You realize you've become a different person, and you've made yourself into someone more that you want to be. I find it really rewarding every time I speak now because of the context I came from. It's like a validation of what I teach too, teaching people about personal growth. I know it works because I've been through a number of these types of transformations myself. And I know it's like, we're not stuck with how we are, as a kid or in high school or in college or whatever. We can learn new skills socially, physically.
Yeah, you've got a
mentally,
growth mindset. You're like, well, I am an introvert and therefore I must meet these, or I am touch averse and therefore I am fixed and I won't change. That's a fixed mindset versus obviously you're like the most growth mindset person on the planet. Maybe, I don't know. At least in the top 100.
But the changes really show up when you have something really obvious to validate it, like being able to get up in front of an audience on a stage, do a 3-day workshop.
You can record it.
That's a very clear goal. It's like not a fuzzy thing that, you could say, oh yeah, I'm over my fear of public speaking, but yet you never speak.
Right.
You're like, I could do that. I wouldn't be afraid to do that.
I can hug 100 people in an hour. Sure.
Yeah. Well,
have you done it?
Well, go do that.
Right.
And I found that especially as I lean more and more into things that I once was afraid of, then fear, it's like there's a systemic effect. It's like fear goes down across the board. Like last year I went skydiving for the first time and it was just easy. It was fun. And I really wasn't particularly nervous or afraid to do it. Whereas probably back when I was in more of my fear phase, that would have been a big, big deal to do. And it's funny talking to a lot of other people and seeing how, people my age, they're terrified to go skydiving and they're like, I could never do that. I'm just like, why not? Why not? It's just, jumping out of an airplane. It's not.
Why not?
It's a passive thing,
Lots of people do it.
You mostly just fall.
Pretty much.
Gravity does all the work. It just takes, you're on the ground like, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes after you jump out of the plane. It's not that big a deal.
It's a pretty big rush though.
Yeah, it can be pretty fun, when all the air is whizzing by and it's cold.
Now, I've heard that the after effect lasts a while. You get a really huge, like, I don't know what it would be, like an adrenaline kind of like amped. Yeah,
well, I don't know. I heard that too. People told me that before they went, but I think maybe that lasted a day and a half or so.
That's pretty good though.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I mean, it was exciting. It was like we were really amped up. Rochelle and I
thought you were going to be like an hour.
Oh.
You were amped up for an hour after, but you said a day.
No,
but
so. Like some people gave me the impression that it would last for 2 weeks.
Oh no.
I was like, after a couple of days, it's okay. It's back to normal again.
Right.
But I think maybe it's a bigger transformation if you have a lot more fear going into it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then it gives you a bigger sense of accomplishment.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of you kind of like veer all the time now.
Pretty much, yeah.
And the last time we talked, whenever you have things going nice, then you break them. So you're
Yeah,
that to me is like you want to sort of like commit to living your life as an improvisation.
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. I guess it's that I get so much reward out of the growth experience itself. I don't get much reward out of having stuff or accomplishing certain thing, like making a certain amount of money doesn't really matter to me.
Right.
I'm not even that. It's like growing a business is not that big a deal to me. But I like going through personal transformation experiences, like taking something that I was no good at and finally becoming good at it, and then also enjoying the experience of being able to teach that and share that experience with other people. To me, that's especially rewarding. And so I just like seeking out experiences like that again and again and again. The big one coming up now is going through a transformation where my girlfriend Rochelle and I want to basically travel around the world and downsize all our possessions to essentially what'll fit in like a carry-on bag and a laptop bag.
That's great.
Just to like travel for quite a while. And another challenge I'd been doing, which I've already pretty much done quite a bit of, was seeing how much I could travel just for free without having to pay for a place to stay.
Oh, awesome.
Sort of like couch surfing, but just going from invitation to invitation and finding out like I could not only get free trips to Europe by like getting a speaking invitation there and having meet people and I would get invitations to go visit with them or stay with them. And I would just like hopscotch from one invitation to the next, and I would go travel for 4 or 5 weeks, in Europe, never paying for a place to stay, just going from one invitation, like, oh, you can stay with us for a few days, and oh, here you can stay here for a week, and just having a lot of fun with that.
So, are you planning on selling your house, or are you going?
Yes.
Oh, you are.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This year I would like to. Now that it's the housing prices have finally come back up a decent bit.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yep.
Actually, yeah, that's cool. And it's awesome that you've got your girlfriend that wants to do that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys,
she's already doing it now. In fact,
really?
She no longer. Other than being able to stay at my house right now, she no longer has a stable place to stay. So she's currently in Paris. She'll be there another little over 2 weeks, and then she'll be coming back to Vegas. So she's been traveling through Europe since I think like January 9. So she's been there quite a while now.
I've often wondered about that. Can you like just keep traveling indefinitely? I guess you can. You never have to like go home, right?
Yeah.
Your passport stays good. You are limited to like a 90-day stay on a tourist visa, right?
We're essentially going to be homeless, so we won't have a stable home. But there's some people I know who've done this for years. One I know has been over 10 years and absolutely loves it. And I find that the people who love it most are the ones that do it fairly slowly. Like they'll go to one city and stay there for 2 or 3 months, and then pick another city and go there for a while. That way they can kind of get into a routine instead of, the ones who get burned out are the ones who are switching cities every few days or every week.
Yeah, that's too much moving.
It's crazy.
Yeah. My wife and I often thought of it as like a lily pad sort of thing. Where, you're not constantly on the road, but you don't have a house, but you've got, say, like, we like this place and we'll be Airbnb it or stay with friends or whatever it takes to be there, during this time of year. And then we'll go and see her family during this time of year. And then we'll go see my family, when the weather's not, frozen tundra.
Yep. Yeah. Airbnb is great too. We love Airbnb because you could get a place to stay pretty quickly in a good part of town. And Rochelle's staying in one right now in Paris.
Oh, really? So do you want to use like couch surfing first, and then if you can't do that, then Airbnb it? And
no, because I don't really like sleeping on a couch.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we like having our own place a little bit. So Airbnb is great because at least you get your own room or maybe your own little tiny apartment or something to stay in, which is kind of nice. And, if we need to, we'll do hotels. But I often like staying with other people. So staying in a house with some local is kind of nice. Or visiting with friends who have a spare room. Get a lot of invitations like that.
Or a spare house.
Yep. I feel pretty much equally as comfortable traveling like couch surfing or Airbnb style as I do staying in a 5-star hotel. It's just a different type of experience.
Cool. So when do you want to sell the house and start that full time?
Well, I want to work on that this summer. So it depends on how long it takes to sell it. But
right.
Basically my plan was to start, getting it ready to sell in June.
Wow. That's funny because I recorded a little intro, not knowing what we were going to talk about. And I said, I know he's really into travel now and he's in the process of selling all of his possessions. Is he selling his house? I think he's going to sell his house. We'll have to ask him. And I did.
Yep.
That's cool. So maybe you might have to rent it out, do a rent to sale thing or.
No, basically I'll just start with the travel when the house gets sold. So that's kind of,
okay.
That's basically my limiting step. Oh, okay. So, yeah, it's not a deadline for me or a rush thing. So,
gotcha. Once you got it sold, then you're on the road then.
Whether it sells in 2 days or takes months, whatever it takes, then I'll just go after it's done and, gradually, downsize along the way, depending on how much time is left. I've already downsized a bunch of stuff already, donated things to charity and stuff and cleaned out the garage and just, getting ready to make that kind of transition. And also in my mind, I'm telling myself, okay, don't acquire any new stuff.
Don't get new big things.
Minimal stuff. Yeah, don't buy big new possessions because you're just going to have to get rid of them later. So partly it's just getting into that mindset that was really helpful. But that's a big kind of scary transition too. As when I grew up, I'd never been outside the USA. The first time I went to, I guess, like really outside the USA didn't start until I was in my late 30s. So it's kind of nice to, be more comfortable with that. I feel like I'm still pretty new at it. I've been to 10 different countries now, gradually getting there, but there's still, whole continents I haven't been to yet. So
Sure.
I really want to get out there and explore more and see more of the world and learn about different cultures. So for me, it's very much something I'm doing for personal reasons, just as a learning experience.
Yeah. My wife and I both want to move. We have wanderlust. We're addicted to moving from the Air Force.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you move around a lot when you were in the Air Force?
Yeah. And we got really good at it. So I started out in Michigan, and that's where I grew up. And then, there's this whirlwind of, okay, you take a bus to Milwaukee, and then we flew to Texas, and then Texas was the 8 weeks of basic training. Mm-hmm. And then a little bit of leave back in Michigan, and then Keesler, Mississippi for another 8 weeks of more training, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Japan for 2 years. So that was awesome. 18-year-old in Japan. And then from there, we went to Hawaii, and that's where I met Yayoi. And we got married in Hawaii. From Hawaii, we went to Florida, and we were in Florida for about 4 years. And then from there, we went to England. And England was great because that opened up the travel door to Europe. So then we got to do all the different European travel. Lots of Amsterdam and France and Germany and Salzburg, and did the Sound of Music tour. It was great. It was awesome. And then we went back to, wait a minute, I screwed that up. First we went to Japan, and then we went to England. So from Florida we went back to Japan. Awesome, lots of skiing, and then England, and then from England then here. And I've been here way too long. Since 2003.
2003, yeah, that is a long stretch.
We've got way too stuck.
That's long. Yeah, that's longer than I've ever been in like one particular place for quite a while at least.
Yeah, I think I might have been here longer than I was in Michigan, which is crazy. It's getting close, not quite. Anyway, time to move.
or get on the move.
Yes, get on the move. I need to move.
To me, it's just a temporary thing, and I guess it's it sort of aligns with the same dynamic of taking something that I was no good at, like just not feeling very worldly. I remember when I was finally taking my first trip to Europe, which was in 2011, it felt daunting, like this really big thing. Like, wow.
There's a passport, and
like
there's terrorists out there.
You have to get on a plane for like 10 or 12 hours.
I might get lost, or
Yeah, and they speak other languages there, and it felt like such a foreign thing to do, and I felt such so inexperienced in it and don't know what I'm doing. So finally Rochelle and I got together and like, okay, of all the cities in the world, I asked her, where do you want to go to most? And she said Paris, and I said me too. I said, well,
wow, perfect.
I said, if we both have the same city we both want to go to, let's just do it. Let's go to Paris. And she said, okay. And I said, no, you don't get it. Let's go to Paris like now. Let's just make it happen. Let's do it as quickly as possible, and let's just go. And so we, clear our schedules, and we, 6 days later, we were in Paris about as fast as we could, book a flight without paying an extraordinarily crazy amount. And also, we rented an apartment there, and it took a little while for everything to go through on that. So basically, as fast as we could put it together and have a place to stay when we landed, we worked it out. And then we spent 2 weeks there, and we just had an amazing time. And after I went there once, I was like, what was the big deal? This is not that difficult.
Right. Right. And everybody speaks English in Paris.
It's just a city. Yeah.
It's just a city. It's not that big of a deal.
And I did
you probably had to get on 2 planes maybe.
Two or actually, no, we had a direct flight. I think the first time we went there.
Direct flight. Wow.
I think we flew direct from Las Vegas to Paris, which is kind of unusual because usually I
go through Heathrow.
Usually I have to end up taking 3 planes to get to whatever city I'm going to when I go there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just a really cool, fun experience. And yes, it had that foreign element to it, but it was very friendly. We had a very friendly experience the whole way through.
And Parisians are just like any other big city people. Now I look at that as like, because I was kind of like country mouse, city mouse growing up. I came from the country. And the first thing I noticed that was different about city people is they're moving at a higher frequency. And so country people think that means they're rude, and they're not. They're just going faster than you, and they're easily annoyed by your country ways.
By your slow Southern drawl.
Exactly. In my case, I sounded a little bit like I was from Fargo or something there. Yeah.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah.
Yeah, you betcha there. Yeah. Eh? Well, this has been great. We've been going way too long. This is supposed to be
rambling now.
Yeah, we're probably rambling on now. So let's do this again. We'll put you down for a reattack. So before your next workshop, after this one, we'll get together again and do another show.
Beauty.
Thanks, Steve, for doing this.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Hasta la vista.
Baby.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.
Hey, the show's over. Hey, you're still here. And guess what? There's a bonus. Steve and I actually talked for about over 2 hours. So this was already a long show, a little too long. So the bonus content was a little rambly and not really meant for consumption. We just kept talking, and I kind of started recording again anyway. So if you are into that sort of rambling conversation, then some of this is fun. Some of it is a little rambly. It consume at your own peril. I think some of it's fun and some of it's a little tedious. So, there you go. You have been warned. There is a secret bonus that is linked in the show notes area. It won't be in the feed. Unless, of course, you ask me to put it in the feed. And if enough of you ask me to put it in the feed, maybe someday I will put it in the feed. But as of now, I'll just upload it and put a link in the show notes and say, here's some bonus rambling. Enjoy. Shh. Thank you, Chris Brogan. I love you.